Hi, I'm Kitty Felde.
And I'm Marie Felde.
100 years ago, our grandparents, Gertrude and Peter Felde, got married. They immediately set off on their honeymoon, driving from Chicago to Los Angeles in a Model T Ford.
Kitty and I are retracing their road trip to find out what remains of that 1925 America, using our grandmother's letters as our roadmap.
Welcome to Honeymoon Road, Pete and me and our Model T.
Florence, Kansas, September 21st, 1925. Dear folks, I'm not going to write so much as I am all in. We were at a place called Emporia last night, and gosh, did it storm. Everything was soaked and wet, and the roads today are one mass of mud and water. Many of the people in the camp did not pull out at all. Pete monkeyed with the stove, and we finally pulled out at about 11 o'clock and pulled through mud until about 6 o'clock. In order to stay on the road, you have to drive in the middle of it. We passed one car which had gone in a ditch, and another was pulling a man out and made us go over so far that he had to pull us out. It's a great life if you don't weaken. This certainly would be no trip for anyone in delicate health, and Pete can thank his stars that I am a healthy brute.
It took Pete and Gert 7 hours to reach Florence, about 45 miles west and a bit south. It took us, following the exact same route, all of about 45 minutes.
And we were lucky. The weather was terrific most of the way. But when it did rain, well, as native Californians, rain is sort of an unusual occurrence, so what did we know? But it really rains in Kansas. Sure loud. I mean, I don't think it's hail, though.
Believe me, the high shoes, Marg's coat, and gloves came in handy today. Pete had some heavy underwear, which I wore, and even with that on, I was cold. I hope it clears up tomorrow, although it'll take some time to put the roads in good shape. At times, things are so outrageous impossible that you just have to laugh. But of course, that was just today.
Oh, the night was dark and dreary, and the air was full of sleep. Well, the old man stood out in the storm, and his shoes were full of feet. Oh, it ain't gonna rain no more, no more. It ain't gonna rain no more. But how in the world can the old folks tell? It ain't gonna rain no more.
We're on the Santa Fe Trail, which was pretty good till it rained. Hope we can get to Hutchinson tomorrow.
The Santa Fe Trail was a 19th century wagon train trade route. It went from western Missouri to Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's now a National Historic Trail. Pete and Gert would likely have followed this route west from Florence, at least through Dodge City to western edge of Kansas. In fact, maybe all the way to Santa Fe. But there's a mystery in that, and it's something we'll get to later in their adventure.
I cannot write very well as I have a box on my knee which jiggles around quite a bit, but I guess you can make it out all right. By the way, Pete fixed the stove. He had to put in a new needle. Smart husband I got. Everyone we meet, of course, wants to know where we're going and where we're from. They'll say, California is a wonderful place if you have a trade or money. We, of course, have the money, as well as several trades.
Folks like Pete and Gert moved to California long before the days of the Grapes of Wrath and the Great Depression of the 1930s. There were jobs in the Golden State. My maternal grandmother moved to California in 1906 because her brothers were bricklayers and they thought they could get work after the San Francisco earthquake. Oil, agriculture, and the growing entertainment industries turned Southern California into an economic engine, attracting millions of people to the LA area. California was promoted as the land of opportunity, and Pete and Gert were ready for it, if they could get there.
They decide to spend the night in a town called Florence.
This town is quite small, although it supports a pretty good movie house, that is from the looks. It is the largest town this side of Hutchinson. It is still drizzling outside, and we were so dirty and tired that we decided to stay in a hotel tonight. Pretty old joint, but nice enough. We're going out for a bite to eat and then going to the movies.
When Pete and Gert came through town, Florence was a booming railroad town. But a flood ravaged the place in 1957, and apparently it never recovered. There's a wide old Main Street that has clearly seen better days, but the Opera House still looks really impressive, and the evening sky and clouds were wonderfully dramatic. We peered through an old garage window, and there was this big, dusty old Ford, maybe from the 1940s. On the west side of town is the town's landmark water tower, erected in 1887 and still bearing its claim to fame. It says, "Our city water is 99.96% pure spring water." Florence also has a nice public library where Kitty dropped off information about her Fina Mendoza mystery books for kids.
The Florence Opera House closed in 1917, maybe because it couldn't compete with the movie house that opened across the street, the one where Pete and Gert had their movie date. Now remember, the talkies weren't invented yet, so it would have been a silent film they watched, accompanied by either a piano or a pipe organ.
In another letter, Gert reports that they saw a son of his father, but offers no review.
A Son of His Father is based on a novel by best-selling American writer Harold Bell Wright, directed by Victor Flemming, who is later credited with directing Gone with the Wind. The movie starred Warner Baxter, Bessie Love, and Raymond Hatton. Unfortunately, the film has been lost, but historians give us the plot of this 70-minute Western. A battle is brewing on a ranch near the Mexican border where a gang of gamblers and smugglers are trying to take it over for their own illicit purposes. An Irish lass shows up looking for her brother, who has fallen in with the gang. She's kidnapped, rescued by the U.S. cavalry, and ends up with a share of the ranch. The movie was filmed in Arizona, where the story is set.
Who knows, maybe Pete and Gert wanted a preview of what was ahead of them on their journey west. We'll have some photos from the movie on our website, honeymoonroad.com.
Oh, you reminded me, Marie, that the name of our podcast is Honeymoon Road, Pete and Me and our Model T. And we haven't talked much about that third star of the show.
And that would be the puncture-prone Ford Model T. But I have a great Ford family story to share here. It takes place not 10 miles down the road from Florence, in a tiny town called Burns, where there was a Ford repair shop in 1925 and possibly the first Ford dealership in Kansas.
Well, my name is Robert Vincent Jr., named after my father, who was born in Burns, Kansas in 1925, right when your grandparents came through there.
Robert is an architect who lives in Oakland, California, and who just happens to be the husband of one of my tennis pals. His Kansas roots go way, way back. Could my grandparents have run into his grandpa? Crazy, but not entirely impossible.
My great-grandfather started a Ford garage there. I was told it was the first Ford dealer in the state of Kansas, whether I have not been able to find proof of that or not. But I do know he did meet Henry Ford, because they had a program where every Ford dealer would go back to Dearborn every year and do a training program, and Henry Ford would address them, et cetera. So he was involved with that. But anyway, they had this Ford garage in Burns. The original building was a wood building that burned down, and I'm not sure the year it burned down, but then they replaced it with a brick building, which is still standing there.
In fact, you just showed me a photograph of that.
Correct.
And what's the name of the shop?
Well, it was Vincent Motor Company. They really sold more Fordson tractors than they did cars, because, it's a rural area of Kansas, and they were just, dealing with the farmers. It was, wheat farmers in that part of the country. And they also were part owners of the grain silo in town. They were.
So they were industrialists then.
Oh, yeah, they were movers and shakers. Yeah, and it's interesting if you look at the U.S. Census for the town of Burns. I think it peaked with a population of about 600.
Now, we've talked a little bit about the Model T Ford that my grandparents drove right by Burns, as it turns out, not far away at all. Your family had some experience with Model Ts and Fords?
Well, they did because they worked on them. And my father used to always joke. He said, "You kids are so spoiled. I never had my first car till I was 12." Because he grew up, his father had the garage there. And of course, he had to learn how to drive a tractor early just to help out. So my father was very familiar around Model Ts and Model A's and old cars.
He knew his way around.
He knew his way around a car. He was always a Ford man.
Well, let me ask you, have you ever driven a Model T?
I've never driven a Model T. I've ridden in one.
And what was that like?
It's just amazing to think that someone would drive across the country in a vehicle like that, because it was pretty rough and slow, and it seemed to me difficult to drive just on a paved street, let alone a dirt or muddy road.
Wasn't going to make this a long letter, but it seems like it's bound to be one. I hope they're not boring, but know you are anxious to hear where we are. Would like to hear from somebody before I get to Cal, so hope you write one of the stopping places on our route list. With love and best wishes to my Chicago friends, I am lovingly Gert.
Honeymoon Road is written and produced by Kitty Felde and Marie Felde. Gert's letters are read by Terry Felde Shower. You can follow us on a road trip at our website, honeymoonroad.com. That's where you can find copies of Gert's letters, photos, a road map, as well as the music credits and research links. That's honeymoonroad.com. Coming up next on Honeymoon Road.
We didn't get into Hutchinson until almost 8 o'clock. They're having the state fair there. And there were people galore in camp, a regular tent city as they call it.
I'm Kitty Felde.
And I'm Marie Felde.
Thanks for joining us on our adventures on Honeymoon Road.
That is why they